Welcome back. This is Breezing Through, and I'm Emily. It's October, which means it's Halloween, but I'm sure if you are in the Northern Hemisphere, especially if you're in the US, you're decorating for fall. I love pumpkin pillows. It's funny because I love Christmas, and I really do like fall. I like decorating for fall. My husband says that the pumpkins multiply every year. I have not bought a single pumpkin this year. I may have gotten a few fall decorations / Halloween decorations, but no pumpkins and not as many as in the past. I've actually gotten rid of quite a few pumpkins. And I will say, historically, I have a bunch of crafts that I have in my mind that I want to do, or a bunch of projects that I want to do, like things that I've seen that I want to recreate. I've done my pumpkin wreaths. I have done tile mat designs. I have done other kinds of wreaths. I've reconstructed that concrete pumpkin tower for my mom. Just wasn't feeling it this year. It really wasn't. And I don't know if maybe it's because I've been working on my son's bed, his bedroom. I don't know. But my mom and I were out running errands, and we did come across two different things that I loved. Absolutely loved. And I was like, well, I would love to buy those, but I can recreate those at home because I have so many pumpkins. So first up, we saw these, which I about died. Those are so cute. And you could do them in any color you wanted. They don't have to be in pink or blue. And I have so many pumpkins at home that I could do that with. So I was definitely putting that on my list. And then we ran across this. I didn't get a picture of it in the wild, but this is what it looks like. And I was like, wait a second, I have pumpkins that I could totally do that with. I have so many pumpkin pillows. And so I decided that day I came home and I decided to start making pumpkin pillow crafts for October. So I'm sharing them with you today. So this is ways to upcycle your pumpkin pillows so that you can actually enjoy them again, because sometimes I want to not just be sad beige. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a couple of different versions of each project that I'm going to show you, just so they're not just sad beige, but they're also fun and pretty too. I've got some pink pumpkins as well. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'll check back in when we're done. So these are all the pumpkins that I can use. I'm not going to be using all of them. First thing is I'm going to do a cute little pumpkin stack. So I decided on these 3 pink pumpkins. I have 2 of the base that I'm using here. So I'm going to cut off the stems first because those are going to be in the way. Once I cut the stems, it was then time to start attaching the pumpkins to each other. I just decided to sew them together. I figured this was the best way to do it. And that way, if in a year I decide I don't want it like this anymore, I can take them apart really easily and reattach the stems. You could hot glue them if you wanted, and then you wouldn't have to sew this at all. I don't mind sewing things. I do it a lot if you follow me. So I just decided this was the best way for me to do it. I did 4 sets of stitches around each pumpkin so that it was secure on 4 sides and it wasn't going to go anywhere. I made sure that it was nice and tight and then tied it off. I repeated that for the top smaller pumpkin, and on this one it was a little bit trickier because this was a knit pumpkin, so there was a wider weave in the fabric, so I had to make sure that I wasn't slipping the thread through the fabric at all. Once the 3 pumpkins were attached to each other, I did debate using one of the original stems from the other pumpkins on the top, but decided since this pumpkin is kind of tiny, it would look funny. So this is how that turned out. I think it's really cute, and it was a nice way to use some of our pumpkins and reduce all of the many pumpkins we have in the house. For the second project, I'm going to be doing the felt flowers on a pumpkin. I don't have felt pumpkins, but I do have a lot of these plush pumpkins. So I'm going to use 2 of the ones that I already have duplicates of. First, I need to cut out the felt flowers, and I'm going to use my Cricut to do this. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to do this, and I tested it a lot. The thing you want to use is freezer paper. I know that sounds bizarre, but you get freezer paper and you cut it out to the same size as the felt, and then you're going to adhere the felt to the freezer paper. You want to adhere the felt to the shiny side of the freezer paper. I have my Cricut heat press, and so I set that to 400, and I put it on each section of the fabric for 30 seconds, 3 times. So it ended up being 1.5 minutes, because if I did it less than that, then it didn't completely adhere and it got caught in the Cricut and it was just a complete and total mess. Once the felt was adhered to the freezer paper, I then put it on the cutting mat, and here I'm using the fabric mat for my Cricut. So I would put the felt on and then roll it on with a rolling pin. Again, might sound weird, but it works, so trust me. Now, in order for this to actually cut, I did do a custom setting for this. So once you're in Cricut and you have this all ready to go, you press make. I am doing it on a mat, so I clicked that and then continue, and then once it connected, I then went to browse all materials, and on the bottom left you can see where it says material settings. I clicked on that and then scrolled all the way to the bottom of that where you can select add new material. I named it felt freezer paper so it was easy to find. I then turned up the setting all the way up to 350, had it cut 5 times, and then I'm using a fine point blade. I was then able to go and select that material as what I'm using for this cut on the Cricut. I did have to search for it. It didn't just come up, but once I typed in felt, it then came up and it was the first one, so I clicked that. I also bookmarked it so I could use it again later and hit done. I also changed the pressure for the cut to more because that just helps it cut through both the paper and the felt. And then it cut really well. I did have to babysit it a little bit because there were some times where the felt would get caught in the blade and I would have to make sure that it didn't pull too much in order to keep it from catching or from cutting incorrectly, but it did fairly well. Once each color of felt was done, I then peeled off the excess and then took the felt flowers off. I did end up having to spend quite a bit of time taking all of the freezer paper off of my Cricut mats, but it worked and I was happy with it. So I didn't mind taking that time to do that. As you can see, I'm using lots of different colors of felt. I'm actually using colors in the pink family and the brown family because I've had the most of those and I have pumpkins that will work with those colors. Once all the flowers were printed, and I did these in different sizes so they would be able to stack them together and they would look cute, I then made these little flower bunches that I threaded beads onto in order to, one, have a center, but also have them look cute and like a finished flower. I got the set of beads that I used for this off of Amazon. I actually got them back in 2020 when I was super into making seed bracelets during the pandemic. And that container that I got is huge, and so this barely made a dent on top of all the other bracelets I'd already made. Once all of the flowers had centers in them, I then started securing them to the pumpkins. I am doing a white pumpkin for the pink flowers, and on the pink ones I'm using this light pink, a dark pink, and the cream. I originally was going to use the cream on the brown pumpkin, but I didn't like how the cream looked with the beige and the brown flowers. It just looked off, and it looked way better with the pinks and on the cream pumpkin. Again, if you don't want to sew, you could probably hot glue everything together. You could hot glue all the flower sections together and then hot glue beads to them and then hot glue them to the pumpkin. I didn't want to do that because, again, if I wanted to next year to use this pumpkin without flowers on it, I could easily just snip all these flowers off and be done, and there wouldn't be any damage to the pumpkin, and I could potentially use the flowers for something else later. I did overmake the flowers for both pumpkins, but that's okay because my daughter has claimed them. She's decided she's going to do something with them. I don't know what, but she's thrilled. So for the cream pumpkin, I decided that I was going to do light pink, white, dark pink, and then continuing that pattern for the top flower all the way around. And I just alternated the height of where I'm putting these flowers so it looks pretty even all the way around. And then for the brown pumpkin, I had a lot more flowers that had the dark brown flower at the top and not as many with the beige. So I decided to do the pattern this way where it's a dark flower and then a beige flower at the top and then a dark flower and then a flower that has beige in the middle. So there is still a pattern here. I like how it turned out. And now instead of buying those flower pumpkins that I saw, I made these. And I will say those were only $24 and they were much smaller than mine, but that was a lot of work. And so $24, $25 is not enough money. So whoever made that is not making a living wage. Just saying. Well, there we go. So which one was your favorite? I loved them all, honestly. They were just so fun to make. It was such a great, just little pick me up to get me back in the mood of creating things that are not made from wood. Like, I'm very into woodworking and I love that. And I love working in my son's room right now. But sometimes I need to have another creative outlet that gives me it just helps with my creativity like across the board. If I'm doing multiple creative things with multiple mediums, it helps me a lot. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully this provided you with your own ideas for making some projects for this fall and maybe for next fall. If you liked this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can see more videos like this in your feed, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.